Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 4th of June, now it's 20 to 11 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update today, in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Second update will be a little bit late in the afternoon on my Patreon page, and today I will upload for Patreon another episode of informal talks, and I will summarize previous week. I will share additional information that will be reported by Russian media, and same time I will try to answer on some questions that I will see in the comment sections. That being said, let's talk about news now, and I will start with Ukraine and special military operation. And first news is about failed attempt of Zelensky's regime to cross Dnieper River in Kherson region, and according to Russian officials, Russian military personnel did notice Ukrainian forces during their attempt to cross Dnieper, and then Russian military aviation was called in, also Russian artillery, and as a result of missile and artillery strikes, Ukrainian forces, amphibious forces, did lost 37 military personnel killed, and 23 military personnel during this operation was wounded. So quite significant casualties on behalf of Zelensky's regime. According to Russian side, Ukrainians were trying to establish some forward positions on islands of Veliki and Bukaevsky in the delta of the Dnieper River. Let me show you this area. So this is, by the way, the Dnieper delta. As you can see, it's a huge delta, many islands or islands in this area, and this is Bukaevsky Iceland, and this is Veliki Iceland, where Ukrainian forces were trying to establish some positions. And let me show you this area also from this map, and you can see landscape here. It's quite muddy, nowhere to hide really, and that's why I do find it difficult to understand why Zelensky's regime is constantly conducting this attempts to cross Dnieper River with more or less small groups, when it's obvious that these kind of operations are suicidal. I can understand that they want to test readiness of Ukrainian forces to conduct amphibious operations, and as we know, United Kingdom and the United States are actively preparing for last many months Ukrainian forces exactly for this type of operations to cross waterways, but still it's hard to understand why they are conducting this small-scale operations when it's obvious that it's a kind of suicidal mission. How many times they're gonna test Russian readiness of Russian forces to take on these sabotage groups or these special forces units of Ukraine that are trying to conduct these type of operations? I don't know. But we are, constantly hearing this kind of information that week by week Zelensky's regime sending on suicidal mission Ukrainian military personnel. But by the way, if you notice, yesterday I did spoke about possibility of Ukrainian amphibious operations on the Dnieper River and in direction of Energodar and Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. I'm quite sure during the so-called Ukrainian counteroffensive, which may never even take place, it's quite logical to think that Zelensky's regime will attack, Zelensky's forces will attack not just straight in straight line in direction of, let's say, Tokmak, Melitopol and Berdyansk, from Orekhovo, Gulyai-Pole and maybe Ugledar. But also they will try to conduct marine operation to cross this Kakhovka water reservoir, and also there will be some marine operations or amphibious operations to cross Dnieper, not just in Delta, but more intensively in direction of Novaya Kakhovka, where this dam is located, which is right now only way to move heavy military equipment from one bank of the river to another. But yet again, these kind of operations will be kind of smokescreen, because of course main direction of Zelensky's of counteroffensive of Zelensky's regime will be this land bridge here. And I guess all this topic of Ukrainian counteroffensive is quite confusing for many, and I did see some comments about it in comment section, and I will try to explain my take on it a little bit better. I did say from very beginning, since these talks began about Ukrainian counteroffensive, that there will be no large scale Ukrainian counteroffensive. I was saying this for many months now, and I'm remaining on same position, that Zelensky's regime don't have enough manpower, don't have enough ammunition and military equipment to conduct large-scale counteroffensive in direction of this land bridge. And what I mean by large-scale is that to have any hope for success in Zaporozhye or Kherson regions, and to have any hope that Ukrainian forces will be able to cut this land bridge, they need to conduct not just local scale offensive operations, but truly large scale operations, when tens of thousands of soldiers are crossing the Dnieper River in Kherson region, when thousands of soldiers are crossing this waterway to attack Energodar, for example, and Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and when another tens and tens of thousands of soldiers are conducting offensive operations from Orekhovo, from Gulyai-Pole, and from Ugledar here. And by the way, we do have quite enough information from open sources about approximate number of Zelensky's regime's reserves in these areas. We can, for example, take in account recent leaks from Pentagon, according to which Zelensky's regime do have from 7 to 8 to 10 to 12 more or less battle-ready brigades that were especially trained to conduct offensive operations. One brigade is, when it comes to Ukraine, it's in every country a different number, but in Ukraine, one brigade is about 3,000 to 4,000 soldiers. So let's say all this operation, all this story with the leaks from Pentagon was attempt by Washington to confuse the Russian side, and in reality, Zelensky's regime has not 7 or 8 or 10 battle-ready brigades, but let's say it's twice of that number. Let's say it's 20 or even 25 brigades. Let's do some simple calculation, and we will come up with the approximate number of Ukrainian reserves, last reserves, that will be about 70, 80, maybe a little more, 1,000 soldiers. And by the way, Russian side, according to yet again open sources, Russian side has on this land bridge and in surrounding areas 100 to 150,000 soldiers and another 100,000 reserves. So it's just too obvious. Just simple math is doing its stuff. It's once you compare sides in this area, it's becoming obvious that Zelensky's regime won't be able to conduct large-scale operation, no matter who and what will say in Washington, in London, in Brussels, or in Kiev. Facts don't care about anybody's feelings, isn't it? So they may want Zelensky's regime to be able to conduct large-scale counteroffensive, but they just facts are saying that it's impossible. It's just technically impossible. But same time, this 70 to 80 or 90,000 reserves, that last reserves that Zelensky's regime did have, and now they are concentrated in Kherson, Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk regions, partially in Kryvyi Rog region. These forces are quite enough to conduct local scale offensive operations, because as I was saying for quite a long time now, and many other channels, Zelensky's regime is under huge pressure from Washington and London to conduct offensive operations, because questions already are rising in West. Why it's Russia that conducting offensive operations? Why it's Russia that gaining control over the new and more territories, when Western elites send hundreds of billions of dollars in money and in military equipment to Zelensky's regime? Why so much resources were delivered to Zelensky's regime if they are not able to achieve anything really? And that's one of the reasons why Washington and London is so actively pushing Zelensky's regime. And by the way, any interview, for example, and they are using not just direct contacts to influence Zelensky's regime, but they are also using Western media. And just look at it, any interview that Zelensky or his associates are giving to Western media, any interview is about Ukrainian counteroffensive, when this Ukrainian counteroffensive will begin. So, West is no longer patient with Zelensky's regime, and that's why I'm quite sure there will be no large-scale counteroffensive. I did just explain this. Why? Because they don't have numbers. But they have enough reserves to conduct some local-scale offensive operations, and then tell their Western masters that, we did what we could, and we failed, but things happen. But at least they will have something to say, when right now all Zelensky and his associates are doing is complaining that they don't have enough money, they don't have enough weapons, they don't have this and that, and the West is fed up with this. And that's why we are hearing from Washington, from Brussels, from London, that Zelensky's regime receive all the necessary military equipment to conduct offensive operation. West is demanding this. So that's why I'm quite sure in coming days, coming weeks, there will be some activization of Ukrainian forces on this direction, on the direction of Azov Sea. And of course, they won't be able to cut this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. But on the initial stages of this activization, they will have some local scale success before Russian defense lines will stop them, before these brigades, Ukrainian brigades, will run out of steam. And then, as I said many times before, it will be Russian turn to conduct offensive operations. And I believe Russian General Staff already has probably, or should have, plans to deal devastating blow to those Ukrainian brigades that will participate in this local scale offensive operations. And I'm talking about local scale, because from Orekhova, if any Ukrainian brigades will move to direction of Tokmak, for example, they will never reach Tokmak, but they will probably manage to move forward about 1,000 or 2,000 meters. That's 1 or 2 kilometers before they will be stopped. Same will happen two Ukrainian brigades that will move from direction of Gulay-Pole to attack Pologi here. And same story will repeat itself just everywhere. In the direction of Energodar, in the direction of Novaya Kakhovka, they may have some initial success for few hours, few days, and that's it. That's all they can manage. And after that, Russian side will take care of those Ukrainian brigades, and we will see beginning of the end of not just Zelensky's regime, but also Ukrainian armed forces as more or less capable entity. So I hope I did explain my take on it, because when I'm saying there will be no large-scale counteroffensive, I'm talking about large-scale counteroffensive that can have any hopes for success. And local-scale offensive operations, it's very different type of operations. And with local-scale offensives, Zelensky's regime don't even have any hopes to achieve any more or less significant success. So it's two different stories, really. So I'm saying there will be no large-scale offensive, but we will see local-scale activity from Zelensky's regime, and they will have some local-scale success for a day or two, and that's it. Then they will start retreating, and I'm quite sure in a fairly short amount of time, Zaporozhye, this city, will become a hot point. And maybe Russian side will even conduct amphibious operation on its own and return control over the Kherson. And maybe Nikolaev here will become a next hot point. And we are talking about in about next few weeks, maximum few months. This will happen before end of this summer for sure. And there are questions, of course, why Western elites are pushing Zelensky's regime to conduct these offensive operations, any scale of offensive operations, if Zelensky's regime has no chance. And by the way, I did spoke about it. I did share my take on it quite a few times, and I will repeat now, if I may, that I believe Western elites do realize that this battle with Russia, they lost, and now they want to end this whole story. And how they're gonna do it? I believe they will force Zelensky's regime to use its last reserves, so that Russian side will take care of those last reserves, will destroy those last reserves, and then once Ukrainian armed forces will collapse all along the front line, Western elites will probably authorize, give permission to Polish elites, to elites of a few other neighboring countries with Ukraine, to move their forces in western parts of Ukraine and establish control of the western regions. And same time, Russian side will conduct large-scale, truly large-scale offensive operations and establish control over the rest of the Ukraine. So I believe Western elites did achieve maximum what they could by provoking this conflict. They start militarizing NATO member states, especially European states. They did create from Russia enemy for Western world by propaganda and enemies in their hands, and there is no need for Western elites to continue this conflict in Ukraine any longer. So that's why they are pushing Zelensky's regime to sacrifice last reserves that they have, because Western elites know perfectly well, after Russian side will destroy these Ukrainian brigades, entire Ukrainian defense lines will start to collapse all along the front line. And exactly at that point, when Russian side will start conducting large-scale offensive operation and will establish control over the entire central and step by step, of course, over the central and southeastern parts of Ukraine. At same moment, at same time, Poland, Romania, maybe Slovakia, Hungary for sure, will enter western parts of Ukraine and establish control over the territories that was part of these countries before Second World War, and Ukraine as a state will cease to exist. That's how this conflict is gonna end, and West is now pushing in this direction. They're not gonna say it openly, of course, but by the way, you tell me why they are demanding from Zelensky's regime to conduct this so-called counteroffensive when they know perfectly well that Zelensky's regime will fail, and with that fail, we will see beginning of the end, not just this regime in Kiev, but also Ukrainian military, Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity. I mean, you tell me any better explanation. But, you know, I have my take on it, and I just did share it. So I believe Western elites did achieve some goals that they have when they were provoking this conflict, and now there is no need for them to continue this operation any longer. But of course, to divide Ukraine between the sides to achieve this goal, Western elites need to make sure that Ukraine has no capable military and regime in Kiev is collapsed. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to divide Ukraine, isn't it? So this is it. That's my take on it. I hope I did explain myself well enough, but I'm quite sure we are entering final stage of this conflict. And maybe before end of this year, we will see Ukraine has been divided between the neighboring countries, and we will see that Ukraine as a state will cease to exist. If not before end of this year, then definitely in the first half of 2024. But this will happen. There will be no more Ukraine as a state once this conflict will end. And Western elites are now, in my opinion, pushing Ukraine exactly in that direction. They did sacrifice Ukraine from very beginning. So there is no surprises for me, at least. But let's continue now. All this division of Ukraine or disintegration of Ukraine will still take some time. It will not happen in a day or two, and unfortunately this conflict will continue for quite a while, and it's tragic that more and more lives will be lost and more destruction will be done on the ground. But I guess I did explain this final point that Western elites are now pushing Ukraine. You know. Let me continue now, and this is, how long is this video? It's already 25 minutes, man. Too long, but anyway, this is TASS News Agency's report, according to which head of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, did made statement that during the previous night, Russian air defense systems did shut down 5 Ukrainian drones over the Crimea or in direction of Crimea, and 4 more drones were disabled by Russian electronic warfare systems. So as you can see, Zelensky's regime still trying to hit deep inside Russian territory in any direction they can. They are desperate. They probably do understand what is waiting for them, and in desperation they are, acting quite predictably, and that they just want to damage Russia as much as they can, because they know they already lost this conflict. They lost it on the very first day, really. This is RIA Novosti's report, next news, according to which, that's exactly what I was saying, according to which 2 regions of Belgorod region was shelled yet again by Ukrainian armed forces. These areas are Shebekina and Volokhanovsky districts of Belgorod region. There is no additional information for now about casualties on the ground, but we have information from governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, who said that more than 4,000 civilians have been evacuated from settlements that are neighboring border, that are too close to border with Ukraine. Quite understandable move, because as I said, as long as Kharkov region is not under full Russian control, Zelensky's regime will continue to shell not just Belgorod region but also Kursk region, and just they will try to hit deep inside Russian territory as long as they can. Let me continue. This is RIA Novosti's report, according to which storm groups of Akhmat special forces are conducting fierce fighting in Marinka direction. Let me show you on the map this area. And yesterday afternoon we had some information. Some sources in Russia did report that Russian forces managed to achieve some significant success in Marinka and Marinka direction. This pro-Ukrainian map, of course, not gonna acknowledge this. Let me check this map if it's updated already. But still, Marinka is contested. And as you can see here, these white dots are approximate line of contact for this moment. And yes, just a little fragments are left under control of Zelensky's regime, and this town is devastated by these clashes between the sides. Not even single building are left not to be damaged. But because of deployment of Akhmat special forces in this direction, I believe in coming days, Marinka will become under full Russian control, because it seems like Akhmat special forces, one of the main goals for them is to establish control over this settlement. And by the way, this is also quite important information. During the previous days there were some reports that relationships between Akhmat special forces and Wagner PMC had been deteriorating. There were some statements back and forth made from two sides, and we have information that head of Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, has had a phone call with the head of PMC Wagner, Evgeny Prigozhin, and they did squash this beef, if I may say it this way. There were some misunderstanding, and as I understand, some forces did try to create some divisions between Chechen forces and PMC Wagner, and fortunately, leaders of this military groupings have a talk and resolve all the issues to make sure that all the main goals are achieved. And after all, any internal confrontation will play on hands of Western elites. So in this case, we can applaud a leader of Chechen Republic and leader of PMC Wagner that they did not let this misunderstanding to become something bigger, and all the issues was resolved between the sides. So yes, let's hope there will be no more misunderstandings, man. Russia don't need this, and the Russian citizens, Russian society don't need any internal conflicts now. Let me continue now, and this is TASS News Agency's report about statement that press spokesman of Russian President Dmitry Peskov made, and he said that Russian President Putin is open for any ideas or initiatives that will help Russia to achieve its officially declared goals in this special military operation. And basically he said that if any peace initiative from any side will allow Moscow to achieve its goals, which is denazification of Ukraine and demilitarization of Ukraine, and then Putin is open to discuss these initiatives. This is diplomatic statement. Of course, we all understand that at this stage we cannot seriously hope that this conflict will end anytime soon, especially because Washington and London are not willing to talk about peace. But once again, these kind of statements from Kremlin are necessary to answer all those initiatives that are coming from China, Middle East, from Brazil, South Africa, recently from Indonesia. So yes, quite understandable and logical statement, even though it's too obvious that Washington and London, in my opinion, are pushing now Ukraine in direction of its end. That's how this conflict gonna be resolved. That's how this conflict gonna be resolved. Western neighbors of Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia maybe, and Romania will establish control over the western regions, and the rest of the Ukraine will become under full control of Russian side, and eventually will be integrated in Russia. I believe that's the way situation is moving, and I believe Western elites are also pushing in this direction, because they understand perfectly well that as long as Ukraine as a state is existing, this conflict will continue. And they don't really need that, because they already achieved some goals, not all goals maybe, but some goals that they had when they were provoking this conflict. And especially the main one is militarization of Europe. And look at the European members of NATO. Almost all states are increasing their budget spending on military almost twice, or in some cases even more. So very significant goals was achieved from a standpoint of Western elites, and they don't push to continue this conflict any longer. Even though to divide Ukraine, it will take some time. Formalization of this process will take some time, for sure. So this is TASS News Agency's report, which is based on statements of head of EU's foreign policy. And Josep Borrell did make statement that without Western help, Ukraine will cease to exist in few conflict in Ukraine will end in few weeks' time, basically. That's what he's saying, and he's in this case he's absolutely correct. Without Western support, Zelensky's regime will collapse probably in few weeks' time. It's just too obvious. And once again, these kind of statements, man, are meant to force Zelensky and his associates to conduct offensive operations. They are from all over the Western world are pushing Zelensky to conduct this to begin this suicidal counteroffensive. And I just explained in this update and in few updates before my take on this topic, why West is pushing Zelensky to sacrifice its last reserves. You know, Western elites want to make sure that Zelensky's regime is collapsing. Ukrainian armed forces are no more capable of conducting any sorts of organized operations, and then we will see that Poland and some other NATO member states will enter this conflict without fear that Ukrainian forces will manage to repeal their attempt to establish control over the western regions of Ukraine. There will be some clashes anyway, no doubt, but they are pushing now Zelensky's regime to conduct this counteroffensive to make sure that Russian side will take care of these last reserves of Ukrainian army, and then it's just obvious that entire Frontline will, entire defense line of Zelensky's regime will collapse, and Ukrainian armed forces will just cease to exist as more or less manageable or more, capable entity. Let me continue, and this is RIA Novosti's report, according to which, and by the way, you tell me what you think about this possibility that Western elites are pushing Zelensky to conduct offensive to make sure that Russian side will destroy Ukrainian reserves, Ukrainian army as a whole, and Western elites need this to make sure that western regions of Ukraine will become a part of NATO member states without any serious opposition from Ukrainian side, because Ukrainian army will be destroyed by that moment, and if some clashes will take place between Ukrainian soldiers and Polish soldiers, for example, I guess Polish army will be able to deal with this issue fairly easily, because, as I said, there will be no organized entity and capable entity as Ukrainian armed forces. There will be no such entity left. So let me continue now, and this is RIA Novosti report. I will just go through headlines now because this video is too long, and I spent quite some time to spoke about this counteroffensive and why Western elites are pushing Zelensky to conduct this suicidal mission. And this is RIA Novosti's report, by the way, about this incident in between Chinese and US warships in Taiwan Strait, which took place yesterday. and according to reports, and I did share video footage on my Telegram channel, Chinese ship almost ram US Navy vessel, and at closest point they were 130 meters from each other. So quite dangerous, but yet again I can understand what Chinese ships are doing in Chinese waters, basically. But what US warships are doing there, that's the question, isn't it? It's quite far away from US. And let me continue. Commerçant newspaper is reporting that Washington Post and many other Western media outlets did mention in their articles that during this sabotage operations of Zelensky's regime in Belgorod region, Ukrainian forces were using military equipment and ammunition from US, Poland, Belgium, Czech Republic, and Sweden. That's at least. And according to some reports, not everybody in Europe are happy that their equipment was used on Russian soil. But yet again, what they were expecting when they were sending this military equipment and ammunition to Zelensky's regime, what they were thinking, that they're not gonna use it against Russia, against Russian citizens, then what they gonna do then? Just watch it or eat it? So these kind of statements that are coming from West, it's not even smokescreen. They kind of, want to say that, what, we don't want extreme escalation with Russia, and we don't send these weapons to Ukraine to be used on Russian soil. But we all know Western elites are enemies of Russia, Western elites are enemies of humanity, and they should be exterminated. That's a simple answer. Western elites should be exterminated as enemies of human civilization. That's it. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Seoul, South Korean leadership did make statement on Borrell's did comment on Borrell's statement that said that Borrell was mistaken, or his statement was not correct when he was saying that South Korea will deliver some little offensive weaponry to Zelensky's regime. And according to this information, Seoul is continuing to pursue its stand on this issue, and they are not willing to send any offensive or little weaponry to Zelensky's regime. And what they can do is send some other equipment, kind of humanitarian aid, but not offensive weaponry, which is a right decision from Seoul. But yet again, unfortunately, Seoul was not quite careful with the relationships with Russia, and South Korean economy is beginning to feel it. They did make a huge mistake when they chose sides in this conflict, and they are now associates with the Ukrainian Nazis and fascists. So, if they wanted in their history in South Korea to have such a page when they were acting on behalf of Ukrainian Nazis and fascists, they got that page in their history. And everyone forever will remember that South Korea was supporting Nazis and fascists. Like it or not, but that's a simple truth. And same goes for every country that is supporting Zelensky's Nazi and fascist and terrorist regime. That's a simple fact. So let me continue now. And yes, in Singapore, this conference will end today. This conference about security dialogue, Shangri-La, and during this conference, in which China was also participating, Chinese defense minister said that relationships between China and US are extremely important for this world, and any conflict between the sides will be unbearable catastrophe for modern world, which is absolutely right. If Western elites will conduct themselves against China like they do with Russia, if Western elites will provoke conflict between Taiwan and China, and Taiwan, by the way, is a part of China, and if Western elites will act after provocation of that conflict, after provoking conflict, if Western elites act against China as extreme in such extreme ways that they are conducting themselves against Russia, then world definitely are in big trouble, because I don't think Western economies and many other economies in this world will be able to survive such a conflict. It will be devastating for this world. It's just too obvious, isn't it? And by the way, this is also quite interesting. TASS news agency is reporting that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is officially president of Turkey again. Well, I guess not everyone is happy that Erdogan won election in Turkey, but I think for Turkish economy, for Turkish society, for relationships between Turkey and BRICS nations, and between Turkey and just the neighboring states, this development is good, because there will be no extreme changes. And I don't think Turkish economy needs some extreme right now, because it's in quite a difficult situation anyway. So from strategic point of view, I believe for Turkey, this decision for Turkish society, this decision to support Erdogan once again was the right decision. But yet again, who am I to judge, isn't it? It's up to Turkish citizens, and they did make choice. I just can say that it's in my opinion, it's the right choice for this moment. So this is Ria Novosti. And also, by the way, of course, we're not gonna be surprised that Biden did sign law about increase in debt ceiling. We all knew this will happen anyway, and that's why I was kind of confused why Western media was scaring Western societies about some default in US and about some collapse in US economy and all that crap, when we all knew that it's only a matter of time, and ceiling on foreign debt or state debt will be increased, and that's exactly what happened. And few more information. So today, OPEC will hold a meeting in Vienna, Austria, and they will, ministers from energo sector of OPEC states will, OPEC plus states will discuss situation on the oil market, and what next steps should be taken to make sure that prices and market in general is stable. RT also is reporting that Western journalists from states that are unfriendly to Russia have been banned from St. Petersburg's Economical Forum, which will take place from 15th to 17th June this summer, just in week's time, about week's time. So quite at one hand, I'm never happy when journalists are banned from anywhere, but in second hand, in other hand, Western media outlets did prove many times that they are now tools in hands of Western elites. They are propaganda tools, and how long one should take these outlets as a media outlets? That's a question, really. And we have a RIA Novosti's report, and this is going to be last news for today's update, according to which in April we have statistic information from Department of Statistics here in Russia, according to which in April there was deflation process on the food sector in Russia, and some prices on the food items did fall, not extremely, but you know, it was overall deflation. I did spoke about it quite some time ago, and yes, on some agricultural produce prices did fall, I will say significantly, really. I will say significantly, 10, 15, 20% at some points, not on some items, on some products, which is, I mean, noticeable. If price will fall just 1%, you're not gonna notice it, but when you are noticing it, it's significant already. But it's a seasonal stuff. It's a seasonal stuff. So yes, in next few months probably we will see continuation of this deflation on prices. And in autumn, or yes, and after summer we will see that price will start gaining momentum again. Not in autumn, but in fall. Autumn, fall. Just a sec. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Autumn, yes, fall. I get confused, man. It's the same stuff, man. Autumn, man. Well, so yes, this is it. This is it for now. I hope you will find this update interesting. I hope I did explain well enough my take on this whole story of Ukrainian counteroffensive, which will never take place if we are talking about large-scale counteroffensive. But there will be some local-scale offensive operations for sure, I guess, because the Zelensky's regime has no other option. And by the way, before I end this update, sorry for this quite bad lightning. I constantly have some issues. It's sometimes it's sound, sometimes it's lightning, you know. So, by the way, there are some reports that head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Budanov, have been killed during the one of the Russian missile strikes on headquarters of this state institution, military intelligence of Ukraine. There are some rumors that are circulating for quite a while now, and let's see. I would not be surprised if it's true, but at least for now, I did not see any official statements from any Russian officials about this topic. But once again, I did notice that many channels, big channels even, are reporting that maybe Budanov was killed during one of the Russian missile strikes. But who knows really. At this time, any information should be taken with a shovel of salt, because it's a crazy times, man, crazy times. So that's been said, let's talk about I'm like zombie now. That's been said, let me finish this video now. And as I said, I get a little bit confused in the end. So yes, this is it. If you find this video interesting, please hit that like button, leave some commentary about any topic you like, and if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, or any other platform that you are active on. And if you think this channel is informative, interesting, useful, and deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, buy me a coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. I will be very grateful for your support. This is it for now. Have a great day, great weekend, and take care.